Hi, welcome to the Wheelhouse Web Solutions Waldorf Marketing Podcast. We're talking about all things marketing, but with a Waldorf twist, bringing you guests and ideas to help you think about Waldorf marketing in new and different ways. In this episode, we're talking with Ewen Finser again, which is awesome to have you back, Ewen. We are talking about AI search and how that impacts Waldorf marketing. Um, folks, we did another episode with Ewan on Reddit marketing. I encourage you to check that out. That's on our YouTube channel. We'll link it below here on YouTube. But if you would introduce yourself, your connection to Waldorf, and then also your connection to AI and AI search, that would be awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Leah. It's great to be back with another exciting topic. Hopefully, I can connect the dots between Reddit and AI. A very important conversation. But some background on me is that I've been kind of an entrepreneur for the last 12 plus years, building a media company. That's kind of the first thing I did, and we still have that. However, about 2 years ago, we started to see some shifting things in the landscape, particularly with Google. We saw a heightened presence of what we call user-generated content, UGC, of which Reddit, is the top UGC source right now. So we pivoted pretty quickly to trying to understand how can we market on Reddit, how can we be visible there, and started working with some brands kind of incidentally, stumbled into an agency model and was featured on some different shows and some different events, and then got some press coverage from Adweek and things like that. And all of a sudden found ourselves getting a lot of interest from different brands. And so we started Red Visible, which is kind of one of the first Reddit marketing agencies dedicated to that channel. We've been doing that for now over a year and have learned a lot from that. While that was happening, we started to see kind of the rise of AI search. And I started to notice that a lot of our media properties that were kind of down on their luck. Traffic was declining. Media has been challenged the last couple of years because of AI and Google search and things like that. But we saw that we were still influencing purchasing decisions and starting to get cited in ChatGPT, in Perplexity, and all these new AI search engines, alongside the work that we are doing on Reddit. We started to get some clients coming in saying, "Yeah, we're interested in using Reddit because we saw it as an important source for our brand to be visible in ChatGPT." And both ChatGPT and OpenAI and Google both have deals with Reddit. I think it's 60, $70 million a year to basically use Reddit as their training data. And so that's kind of the high level view of like AI requires insights. It's kind of scraping the open web. It's honestly stolen a lot of content, I would say, and we experience this on the losing end as a media company. They're basically scraping the content, using it for insights, but the economic model was breaking. Those annoying ads you used to see and affiliate links that, as annoying as they were, they kind of powered an entire ecosystem of the open web that allowed publishers to create original content and get compensated on the back end. So that model is kind of breaking or broken, but we're still influencing purchasing decisions in ChatGPT. Our articles are still being referenced and cited. And so I thought that's a light bulb moment. We also have a variety of kind of mixed media channels, YouTube, TikTok, that we have developed over the years, and they were also getting cited. And so I said, look, this is a bigger opportunity here is to bring it all together. And so we launched about 6 months ago. We launched ScaleVisible, which is the overall umbrella, which incorporates kind of our media arm and our Reddit marketing and helps brands, yeah, as it sounds, be visible and scale that across these new emerging AI landscapes to include Perplexity, ChatGPT, Copilot, Google AI, AI overviews, Gemini, Claude, all the other grab bag of AI startups. And yeah, that's kind of what we're doing now. We're working with a variety of a couple Fortune 500s, a lot of startups, brands in all sorts of sectors, B2B, D2C, helping them kind of create the context that they need to show up in the conversations that matter.
That's super, super helpful because that's a lot. I think it's an ecosystem that a lot of Waldorf marketers don't necessarily understand. I think there's some just base level hesitation coming out of Waldorf with AI, for all the reasons that folks can list of environmental impact and some of the educational challenges that it's thrown at us. But it is really, really interesting to see the role that it started to take in search. And for schools, I feel like um, that's we're really talking about how parents are finding schools.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to ask you to probably articulate this, but you will
Yeah.
articulate this better than I will. But my understanding of the way AI search it works as opposed to Google search is it's much more conversational, so folks can use these AI tools to have an ongoing and refined conversation. Um, so especially in a school context, you can that's actually a very interesting way to look at finding a school because you
Yes.
saying like schools near me, you can be like, I don't know, a good example of schools where my child won't be bullied, but also have a soccer program and things
Yes.
you might never like. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. I'm not characterizing
Yeah,
it.
no, no, it's exactly it. It is it's a reimagination of search. And in the industry right now, there's a lot of talk, in the for the people in the know about SEO versus they're calling it GEO, which is generative engine optimization, which SEOs are saying it's all the same. It's just the same stuff remarketed. And of course the AI folks are saying, no, 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 this SEO is dead. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, but as it usually is. But yeah, that's exactly it. There's context. There's, like I use an example of looking for a new pair of running shoes. In the past, I might go into Google and we've been trained to be like best running shoes, like, that just type that in, right? You wouldn't put your entire life story in there. You want to use a search operator that's going to be efficient, and they're going to open multiple tabs and kind of browse around and click around the web and find yourself on some e-commerce store at some point, and who knows, there's a whole behind the scenes, there's a whole engine and there's attribution, there's click-based attribution, and that's really important. Now with AI, you're kind of going to ChatGPT. It's kind of the blank screen with a blinking cursor, and you start prompting with your story. You say, hey, I'm 36, you weigh this much. I do trail running, but sometimes I also run around my neighborhood, which is pavement. I have three children. If that's relevant, you just kind of feed it the entire thing. My budget's $110, and I really don't want to. I want to avoid Nike. And like think about that's it. We call it personalized search. And so these prompts are now becoming super developed and super in depth. And then the results then we're calling it, there's a query fan. So rather than being like for best running shoes, there's a list of results that are pretty standardized across the board. Now it's these different starting points, and then there's all these other options to refine based on the results. So you might see, you get initial results. You say, actually, this is not what I'm looking for. Can you add like I don't want orange running shoes, or like what about if I need something that's water resistant, and so you add these all these refinements, and each time you're either searching or refining your query, it's pulling context from places. So it's pulling from a lot of the same places that maybe Google traditionally, source, but there's actually only 10% overlap between Google's index and ChatGPT's index, for example, which was a revelation to me, which kind of speaks to this gap, right? There's this huge new opportunity for brands, at least to be thinking about, for schools as well, to be thinking about, well, how are we surfacing? And so a basic kind of audit of that would be, what are some of the things a prospective family or parent or someone who cares about this child, what would they be searching for?
Yeah.
And how does it look in ChatGPT? How does it look in Google AI overviews? And a lot of times it's like these worlds are merging. So Google is now kind of pushing AI. So you'll sometimes often see now this AI overview, which is a very different result than sometimes the organic results below. But we're all kind of in this AI world now. And so just at the very least, understanding how you are being surfaced is the starting point. But you're absolutely right. There's this very kind of personalized conversational approach, which, in some ways is scary and new, but I think it's like everything, it's just change,
Mhm.
and there's an opportunity here. There's good and the bad that go along with it, but um, how do we position brands? And I didn't talk about this in the beginning about my connection to Waldorf, right? So obviously we went to Waldorf school together for years. I graduated from the Heimong School, we. And then right now, we're actually very involved. My kids are going to a Waldorf school here in Raleigh. I'm on the board, so I run enrollment and outreach. So I kind of I can speak to that side too. I say I run, but it's more like advisory, kind of like we're going in the right direction. But we have to pay attention to this kind of stuff. Is like how is our school surfacing? How is it being found? And so I kind of deal with this every day.
There are so many great places that we could jump in. One question I had, first of all, if you want more of a sense of how this all works or have more questions, Ewan posts about AI on AI search on LinkedIn profusely and in a really interesting way. So if you want to understand that, check him out on LinkedIn. Um, one thing that you posted that I thought was really interesting is you talked about the overlap of what's showing up in particular AI models versus in search. Um, I think traditionally SEO has been so much about like how do we get on this first page? How do we become like one of the first couple search results? And AI has just kind of turned that on its head in the sense that um, it's pulling from a much wider range of entries, it sounds like. Um, and so maybe the opportunity for schools as well, or maybe this is an opportunity where, instead of I found with SEO, it can be like the law of diminishing returns to get from like just, you know, 1/10 to eight
Yeah.
can be an incredible amount of work and money and investment. And where being able to rank for more or show up and for more queries and be a part of more conversations, I think sounds more possible now with the way that these tools work.
Yeah, that's a great thing you hit on. I think really what the difference is like Google is very much a zero-sum game in the sense of if you weren't ranking on the first page, you may as well not even bother
Yeah.
for certain queries. And then the top three positions were really valuable. First position is like if you got there as a marketer or SEO or as a school, you are winning, in terms of the market share and visibility. Now with AI, that first place rank probably is also cited in ChatGPT, not always, but probably is cited in Perplexity and these other environments. But it's just one of 30 or 40 or 20 different citations that go into to forming what is really kind of like a consensus is, the answer. And it's in some ways it's like there's a TLDR, of like in ChatGPT, like many people recommend this school because XYZ, and here are the citations and sources. But in another way, you could think about those chat interfaces are they're dynamically generating an article in real, like for you in real time, right? So based on your inquiries, based on your comments, it often even looks like almost like a listicle or like there's different elements to it. It's like, oh, why I might take that and publish on my blog, like that would be something that would be really useful. And so that's one way to think about it. But you're right. And we refer to this as a concept of surround sound, which is getting having different narratives that are kind of mutually reinforcing consistently across multiple platforms, voices, content types. So that might look like having a YouTube channel, have what people are saying on Instagram, what people are saying on third-party blogs, school review sites, directories, Better Business Bureau, Reddit. And it's kind of putting it all, synthesizing those sources and then reorganizing it in a way that again, it's a theory. They have all of it, their own theory of what that should be,
Mhm.
but then calling that out and organizing that information. So it's kind of actually, as new and scary as it is, it's kind of a similar kind of endpoint as what Google had, which is organizing the world's information. But rather than having you kind of driving of clicking the results, it's kind of doing that step for you and kind of like compiling your notes, right? Of if you read all those articles and put them all together, what could you generalize about what they all are saying? And so in that sense, it's a huge efficiency. And Yeah. So anyway, so I think that's absolutely it. It's about kind of showing up in multiple places, and it is different. It's not, you know, just ranking number one or ranking number two. It's being a part of the conversation and having reinforcing messaging across silos. And that's where I think brands are and schools might be susceptible right now, or there might be opportunities, is if they really invested in one channel, and they got their SEO ranking or they had their Google reviews or whatever, like that was the thing, and they finally felt good about that, Now it's like, well, oh, you have gaps in these other. Now all of a sudden, Reddit threads are popping up where they maybe weren't popping up as highly before, or they weren't impacting you as much. Now they're a really important part of this consensus building. And if those are opportunities or gaps or there's negative sentiment, it can really damage or at least be a missed opportunity for a brand.
Yeah, you and I chatted about that on the Reddit episode, where there are conversations happening about your schools. Likely, there's certainly conversations happening about Waldorf education. Some of them can be really negative, and there's
Yeah.
some real opportunities to engage with that, I think, in a constructive way. And I would refer folks back to that video for some tips on how to do that in a way that feels authentic and good. Um, yeah, what I'm hearing is as well in terms of practical takeaways for schools is that it's really important to have a content plan where you're really thinking about, okay, what is our messaging and what platforms are we talking on? Because unlike Google and some of the search engines, which never officially committed to saying whether they use social signals or not on social media,
Yeah.
uh, this it looks like ChatGPT and some of these Claude, some of these other AI channels really do use these social signals. They use reviews. They use all sorts of these other pieces off of the internet. So I think it's really, really important for schools more and more to have a really comprehensive look at where are we, what are we communicating, and have that be consistent. Because one of the things we work with a lot of schools on social media and content planning, and that part of the importance of that I feel like is making sure that it's what you say there is really intentional and in line with what you're saying on other channels and in other places. Because what you were talking about this mutual reinforcement, um, because you can have I think without that, a really scattershot, opportunistic social media that really doesn't do a lot for you in terms of trying to speak to specific interest areas that parents might have.
Yeah, that's one of the number one challenges that we kind of, or one of the roles I think we play is we break down internal silos in organizations. That
Hmm.
was like one of the things I like to say is our most brands, I think including schools, I put them in the bucket, organizations in general, they're operating off of a 2023 org chart that kind of not overnight, but very quickly has become outdated in terms of the functional areas. Like, well, that's SEO, that's social media, that is whatever that's video marketing. No, it's all integrated now, and so it's really important, to your point, to have an overall plan that is nested in the opportunity of where search is and where it's headed, and where discovery is. And it kind of requires this like omnivore or like, Swiss Army knife approach. You have to be actually be everywhere, or at
Yeah.
least be in a lot of different places. And to your point, have that reinforcing messaging, and that is a challenge. So I would say content strategy. What are the important, and really spend, I think, time thinking about what are the journeys
Yeah.
that someone might be on, right? And now we can. It's actually, in some ways it's easier because you can ask the full question. And I think back in the SEO with, like, best schools in whatever, Boston. It's like that's kind of this weird kind of, it makes sense if you're an SEO, but like what does that mean and how does that play out? That's kind of like challenging. But whereas understanding what a prompt, it's a question. It's really just a fully formed question.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fully formed questions that people might be asking. And so coming up with a list of those questions, and it's almost like the start of the overall question, or the topic is like, you know, uh, outdoor learning or like whatever it is. And then it's like breaking that down by what are the different questions that can come from that root,
Mm.
uh, and all the different ways that can ask, and then putting them in a bucket, putting them in a category. And then once you have that identified, on the flip side, what we're describing about these multi-channel modalities is like distribution. distribution has become very, very important. So rather than just creating that one amazing blog article or that one like timely Instagram share with a beautiful image and some captions, how are we like what is the overall question we're asking or we're trying to answer here? And how are we going to repurpose this in multiple formats? And so I think that has become really important too. And so there's a lot of ways to do that, where, even taking a video, interview or something like this, and then you can even leverage AI to create transcripts, you can create content from an interview,
Yeah.
um, a written content. You can create social media posts from that. It does take some, refinement, but I think that is what is really essential here. It's taking that and it's very tempting. I think a lot of brands falling into a trap of, well, I can just use AI. I can just create an article for me, which is like the sugar diet. It gets you so far and
Yeah.
it worked for maybe 3 months, but then it crashes and burns because what AI really wants is if we think of it like an organism, it needs protein, it needs original insights, but it's so hungry and so much demand just at the time when the open web has been disincentivized from creating content on its own because we talked about the ad models and the affiliate. There's a whole ecosystem that supported free-flowing content. Yes, there was incentive misalignment and spam and like all those problems we had to deal with ad bloat, but that did hold up this idea of like we'll create editorial content and yeah, we'll make some money from impressions and clicks on ads, but like editorial separate from advertising. It's kind of this handshake agreement. Now we're in this new world where it's kind of everywhere all at once. And yeah, how do we uh, kind of connect those dots and how do we create original content now when it's you can't just rely on the open web, right? There may have been a handful of Waldorf blogs or something out there or YouTube channels, right, that had a model, an economic model where they could talk about, what is Waldorf education and like, maybe mention some schools and there's some sort of model there that we could work with. Now it's, you know, unless they're just creating it out of the goodness of their hearts, there's no real incentive to be a creator in the traditional sense.
Which is a really interesting place for schools to step in because they have a real incentive to create that content. Um, I love the recommendation you had for brainstorming, and that's where there's some really interesting parallels with SEO because we do a lot of blogging work with schools, and because we found that to be more effective SEO wise than like content creation versus all the technical things that you can do overall. In part because what we try and get schools to think about is if Waldorf education or if your school per se is the answer, what are all the questions? What are all the questions that Waldorf is the answer to? And you think of Waldorf, first of all, having this really holistic picture of the child and also a very holistic way of like educating them. There are so many things that Waldorf is the answer to. Um,
Yes.
and so many content creation opportunities. I mean, there's amazing stuff that you could talk about. Why the heck do you do woodwork and this particular woodwork project in fifth grade? Well, it's because where those children are at and the skills that they're building. So it's not for a shortage of content opportunities. It is really, I think, a really important thing to highlight of like putting it in different places for sure. One of the things I did want to tease out a little bit, especially with Reddit and reviews and all these other places on the web um, that AI is pulling from folks' customer journey with you from before they become a prospective family all the way through to graduation, hopefully, is going to impact how they talk about you. And so if they have a bad experience at any point, often that ends up on Reddit or elsewhere. So it's an interesting mind shift, I think, for schools that like your internal processes are part of your marketing.
Hmm.
The way your class teacher interacts with the families in their class, the way your financial aid process goes, the way um, if there's an unhappy parent in your school, like that's we've always known that's somewhat of a marketing problem, but it's even more so now with all of these platforms.
Yes. Yeah, we have brands that will come to us with with serious Reddit challenges. Like they had, and oftentimes it's something that happened 3 or 4 years ago because all of a sudden Reddit gained a lot of prominence. And so it brought up a lot of the cruft, to the top. And, one brand in particular, they had a bad run. They changed suppliers for one of their direct consumer products, and the fabric changed. And it was a lesson learned. It was like 3 months, and people complained, and but they all like a lot of people complained at the same time. So it's like an archaeological dig. You can tell, oh, that was from that
Yeah.
time they changed suppliers. They changed them back, and they're back to normal. In terms of the product quality is great now, but they have this problem, which and so yes, the Reddit will certainly people go to the complaints like the New Consumer Reports or Better Business Bureau, like where people will go and certainly yeah, and then it gets metastasized across the web because that Reddit shows up prominently in Google. Reddit also is a growing platform itself, so people will just use Reddit organically, and then it's also being spread into AI. And so you end up with that one story can be either positive, negative, or indifferent, showing up in 12 different places that are impacting these fragmented user journeys in various ways. And so, yes, absolutely. And I'll say like product, you know, good product is good marketing. I mean, we've known that forever, but it just if it I think what it really does is it accelerates the urgency of dealing with those and spotting, identifying, and dealing with those core product challenges within a school. Um, you don't have as much room to uh, control or shape or we would hear about I think there'd be schools having issues, right? And you hear about it, but usually it's a multi-year kind of thing versus I think right now you can have parents start school this week or last week had a bad experience, all of a sudden they're on Reddit now and within a couple days it's all over ChatGPT. And so like having those processes in place. Um, and then I think the other point you mentioned is that, yeah, people tend to share their negative opinions, which is generally
Yeah.
by and large the case with all reviews, right? Is it's usually a biased sample size in general, but there's some signal there. There's usually an indication of a core problem if it's consistent negative feedback, even if it's a small percentage. However, on the flip side, engaging your school community in sharing their story, sharing their positive experiences as well. You say like, you get a service call, your plumber comes and, hey, can you leave me a review on Google? And here's a link, I'll take $5 off, your service visit if you can leave me a review. And not even like they maybe say positive, but like obviously they're not paying for the review, but how can you direct your promoters, your 100 true fans, your people that are super happy with their product to the right spaces. They may
Yeah.
be telling all their friends about it, but maybe they're not telling them in it's not the most efficient way. If you could just get them, hey, if you can leave us a review on Reddit, or if you could go to this community, or um, you could, if you have an official subreddit for your school, even encouraging families to be active. It's a double-edged sword because it's an open forum, but saying, hey, can we, share the positive? If you're confident in your product, that can be a huge amplifier to be able to basically create. We recommend this for brands all the time. Create like it's a public, almost Wikipedia or knowledge base with parents asking problems, even if they're saying like, "Hey, I heard you don't offer tuition remission or assistance. That is my main concern. Or I heard that children don't do well in math." When they go to your school. And even if you have that, if it's happening in your Reddit community that you're a moderator of, the school has a presence in and is active in, or maybe the parent kind of circle or community circle is part of that. Um, and then having it answered in from an official account or even an unofficial account. I'm just, Susan from the school. This is my Reddit account, but I moderate in this community or I participate here. Let me answer your question fully and transparently in public
Yeah.
how powerful that then is if it's done right. Again, double-edged sword. I would not recommend brands or schools engage in that process if they cannot resource it or they cannot be, resource is the wrong word, if they cannot pay attention to it, right? And be responsive and engage with it, not in a damage control type of way, but in a transparent, thank you for bringing this. Actually, that's, we have additional support, we have math tutors in these grades and whatever, or we found here's some data, and so yeah, I think that's a huge part of it is getting the conversations to happen and sharing the positive experiences in all these different spaces as well.
For sure. And yeah, the other piece that I think is really interesting with that for schools is I think social media and your blog and all your content creation platforms are real opportunities for parent education. And that takes on additional importance as you hope that parents are responsive in places like Reddit or leaving you educated reviews. So I think we overestimate in schools how much our parents know about Waldorf and how it works. And
Yeah.
I think we need to get over that or past that and really consistently be talking about why do we do this? How do we do this? What does this mean? Not in a jargony way, not with complex terms that folks don't understand, but do it in a way that is really talk about like you know, how does Waldorf approach reading? We have an amazing story to tell. We have a
Yes.
literacy curriculum that starts in preschool. We just don't teach it in the way that the public schools do, or in the way
Yes.
that traditional education does. We're teaching it through a love of story. We're teaching it through movement. Um, we do amazing work, but we have to tell that story first of all to our own community, so that if somebody in one of these forums says, "Oh, you guys don't teach reading," any parent at your school can say, "Absolutely, we teach reading, and here's a blog
Yeah.
I can link you to. Here, I have 4 or 5 things I can say about that." And that's only true if you're doing your job as a school content wise to create those resources and content for parents to share.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think having, and as like again working the work in a public Waldorf charter school here, we have to deal with that all the time, right? Because it is about we have to maintain, we follow the state standards. There are standards, there's testing. We have to, the kids do have to get on computers, so we do have to encourage that and encourage literacy with computers and things like that. Otherwise, the test scores are going to be terrible. There needs to be some familiarization. At the same time, yes, this is what Waldorf does, and I think putting it in terms like you said, literacy. Here's our literacy program. That is kind of that is a the right kind of language to be using versus some anthroposophical term that is just going to be like threefold social order. Like what? That sounds crazy, unless you know, unless you're in the know, right? And so like, how do we, yeah, put because exactly, you're teaching literacy, you're teaching phonics, you're teaching and using these terms that everyone understands, but putting it in this is how we do it, and rather than trying to rename everything or talk about more esoteric concepts that are more anthroposophical. No, this is actually we'll talk about best practices.
Yeah.
This is educational best practices. This is not uh, some other thing that is outside of the kind of the mainstream. This is just a different way of achieving some of the very same objectives that all parents hold for their children, social, emotional, all that well-being. Um, Absolutely. And so yeah, I think having families, having ambassadors is huge. Having places where you can talk about that on your blog, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's just super important to have some sort of process of engaging your community and turning it outward facing as opposed to just having it be inward, which I think is a lot of challenges with Waldorf schools in general, is we're in a bubble, we're in this world. How do we turn it outward a little bit and engage with the world as it is and meet the children where they are?
Yeah, because we do have great stories to tell, and if we can get folks telling them and using the language that people are searching, using the language that they're putting into ChatGPT, I think that'll really go a long way to really making Waldorf more accessible to more people and more approachable. Um, other thoughts about how AI search is different from SEO?
Yeah. I mean, I think the overall thing, we talked about consensus building, that's different. Obviously, the user journeys are very different. I would say the hard part is going to be the tracking because we're going from a click-based world to one where maybe someone starts their journey and ends their journey in the operating system in the chat window. And what does that look like? Well, ChatGPT just announced an integration with Shopify, and they're going to take 2% of sales from Shopify. But then what we're going to see happening is someone's going to come into ChatGPT. I have this problem. I need, I have, I don't know, like I'm over pronating or whatever, and it'll guide them down the path. And then, oh, recommend you try get a shoe that has this and this and this. And then you can like, well, what's the best shoe then? And you're gonna ask these refinements, and then like, and you finally get to the point of, wow, this sounds like the right shoe. And then here's, do you want to buy it? And it's like Amazon Prime, one click, all your credit card information is stored in the system. It's integrated with Shopify. Maybe that user will never externally click outside of that chat window, and that you're, and so thinking about that, and it's very, very early, but thinking about how that might impact schools. There's a whole ecosystem right now that in ChatGPT is it's like an app store essentially. It's agentic. They call it kind of agentic AI, where you can kind of create these agents or tools within ChatGPT. Whether it's like coming up with quotes, so if you're in a construction company, you build a little quote system that's very easy to use and interact with AI. That it's your brand, so it'd be like an enrollment form, maybe is embedded in the future. You have an enrollment form in the ChatGPT app system where someone can, with one click, enroll or request information packets or whatever. And maybe they're not externally clicking. And so that's going to be tricky for us to now. It already is tricky because attribution breaks down. You can see if someone does externally click, they came from ChatGPT in your analytics, but where and how and what was the journey, that's all a mystery right now until ChatGPT opens up. And what that might the catalyst for that would probably be when they launch an ads platform. Um, they're going to have to then share data for people to spend money on ads, and that's where we're going to start to get some data on like search volumes and estimated clicks, and that I think will be the catalyst. But there is this zero click environment or low click environment. So data collection was already a challenge, but at least there was ways you could do it. I think it's going to get more and more challenging. And so it's kind of almost going back to the analogy of a billboard on the side of the road. There's certain places where you need to be, you need to have your sign, in these landscapes. You want to show up when someone searches best alternative schools in my geography. You want to show up, but I can't tell you exactly the ROI. And so a lot of times the conversations we have with brands are a lot of them are either really bullish on being early. They don't want to get left behind. It's like 2005 Google. Back then it was also tricky. Hey, I know my advertisement in the newspaper. I know how many leads that gets me. This online stuff like just sounds like a gimmick. And that's the kind of thing where we are with AI right now. It's very early. The unknown, it's unknown unknowns. But we're going to get to the point where there's going to be more knowledge, there's going to be more data, but it is very, very, very early. And so kind of getting to that future is going to be, you know, where brands are kind of aligning around it. So usually what I say is, just because we can't pencil an ROI, what is the insurance policy? What is the minimum you can spend to take it, like, just like you would on a building, to the search world is kind of turning upside down. We don't want to be late to the game. We don't want to wake up in 3 years and be like, oh, I wish we had done that. I would like now all of a sudden our we were used to a steady amount of leads from Google and these other sources we didn't really understand, but at least they were reliable and it was kind of the same for 10 years, 20 years. Now it's all changed and our leads have dried up. Or on the flip side, like we're getting so many leads, what changed? And like, but what is the insurance policy? How can you build some infrastructure around this content creation and distribution? I wouldn't say just for AI, but I would say with AI in mind. And there's a kind of another argument happening, and there's that there's going to be a bifurcation of the web. There's going to be the web for humans and the web for machines.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. My approach to that is like, what's Reddit? I think in some ways we're marketing for machines, but we're still creating human contract. And I think the AI machines algorithms will get better at identifying the human content. And so maybe that distinction is irrelevant, but I think that's a useful framework of, what are these stories we're telling? How does it fit within the buckets, and how is it getting distributed in the places that will maximize the visibility with AI?
One of the things I've heard and what you're saying, and also in some of the things you've posted on LinkedIn, um, which is actually a relief, I think, for schools, is that ultimately these AI platforms also want what Google wants, which is ultimately what people want, which is useful information and authentic content. So they want to know real stuff from real people about you, and
Yes,
so you can have there are it was true for SEO for a long time. There was a whole industry built around selling gimmicks to try
yes,
and beat the system and get Google to do, to rank you higher than they should. But ultimately,
yes,
Google also spent a huge amount of time and resources to fight that and blacklist that and
yeah,
basically prioritize, because ultimately they wanted you as the user to have a good experience. They wanted you the search results to be useful to you. And I think the same sounds true of AI as well, of like ultimately they want you to get what you want out of the process. And so sounds like the takeaway for schools is continue to create high quality content, but you want to make sure it's in lots of different places, and you want to make sure you're answering as many of those potential questions as possible. And
yes, yeah,
interestingly, that's a lot of what we would advise in any case, which is answer parents' questions, do it in a way that's meaningful and authentic, especially if it's not just the school's voice. Get your parent community involved and answer more and more and more questions that folks are doing in a way that is useful, informative, and
yeah.
communicates your values.
Absolutely. I just underscore that. I think the currency here is trust. I think
Yeah.
it's for your community, and that's why people will they used to be, for a while before AI came about here, it was people searching best schools Reddit in Google
Mm-hmm.
because they're like, I'm opting out of the marketing funnel. I want just real people. I want
Yes.
whether I don't care if it's a bunch of 10 different opinions that are diverging. I just want to know, I just want real stories from real people. And I think that's what what AI wants. But why do they want that? Because if people don't trust their system, they're going to discount it. And
Yeah.
all it takes is one time. We've all experienced that with ChatGPT. Like you tried it 6 months ago, you tried to have it write a contract for you, and it just messed it up. It was terrible. It had some egregious problem with it, and you're like, for six, and then 6 months you said, "Wow, it can't help me with that." Meanwhile, it's actually improved a lot, but like you've written it off, and so that's what AI doesn't want. All these different platforms have different theories and different arguments for why they're better, and they're all kind of it comes back to this trust principle. And even Sam Altman from OpenAI is surprised that people aren't clicking the links as much, the citations. They're kind of trusting it, but trust is a fickle thing. And so I think trust with AI platforms is contingent on their data source quality, and so that's going to be a big battle, I think, in the next 3 to 5 years around what's the sources, who's in charge of policing the commons, how are we going to maintain that quality data source that isn't overly marketed, overly engineered. And at the same time, token for schools and organizations and brands, yes, how do you can do the gimmicks, and that'll probably give you a little bit of a head start or a little bit of an edge here or there. But ultimately, if it comes back to the product, if the product is poor, the experience is poor, there's only so much damage control that you can do.
Yeah.
And so kind of getting back to the basics. But I do think that doesn't mean you don't do anything. Word of mouth marketing is phenomenal, but it's like word of like those people that are sharing that they love the school, they love the product, word of mouth, identifying those individuals and then saying, "Hey, here's how you can support the school." And actually it could be more impactful than a donation
Yeah.
because it's a testimonial video or that is distributed on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, and it's being ingested into AI and it's being spread far and wide so that the next family that is in a position to come to the school or has a question that is then answered because of that or is important context along the journey, that's gonna pay more dividends than $1,000 donation on the annual campaign this year.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you. I think that's critical. Um, this has been fascinating. I encourage folks to check out your LinkedIn. If you have questions for us or for you, and I know last time we threw our emails in there. Um, I can I'll put the contact form in for Wheelhouse in the bottom of this, and
Yeah,
if you have questions for either of that for us, you can throw them in there. Um, really, really interesting having you on. It's so rewarding to have this conversation because I think you're at the edge, cutting edge of a really cutting edge field, and also have that Waldorf student ability to take something really complex and distill it and really help us figure out what the heck is going on. It sounds like there's a lot that schools can do, there's a lot to pay attention to. It's asking, I think, for a different type of awareness and overarching awareness of your marketing and also of your parent experience. But I think it's something that schools should be doing and should be doing in any case.
absolutely. This has been awesome. Thanks, Theo.
Thanks so much, Ewan. Take the best of care.
Bye.